commodity prices are falling. You've seen the stock market start to fall. That's going to have a ripple
Right.
wealth effect. People don't want to make decisions in these types of environments.
The Minister of Jobs here in BC was quick to push out a press release this morning saying that there's, in BC, there actually was a small increase of 5,700 jobs compared to last month. Is that a glimmer of hope for you? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think the pieces still need to fall kind of across the board. Obviously, different parts of the province are going to be more impacted. Obviously, there's a big focus on cars and auto
Right.
imports and exports,
Hmm.
and that heavily impacts obviously Ontario. But it'll obviously have a ripple effect all throughout. Now, yes, of course, it's positive that BC had a slight gain, but at the end of the day, when the U.S. sneezes, Canada's going to catch a cold, and we're now fighting with our largest trading partner. It is going to have a ripple effect down the road. Yes, it was slightly more positive than we've seen in other parts of the province, but at the end of the day, everything's going to hum together. No province is really immune from it. No province is immune from the wealth effect. And the rules of the game are not clear. And so, if anyone does want to expand their plants, look at different operations, when the rules of the game are not clear, people don't invest, people park their money elsewhere, and that's going to cause a ripple effect. Now, obviously, we've seen the Canadian dollar be quite volatile as a result of it. That's not helping. Hopefully, we'll see the Bank of Canada start to provide a little bit more clarity, potential more rate cuts, uh, potentially this month, and for sure by the end of the year. And hopefully, that'll add a little bit of calm to the storm that we're starting to see.
So you would call on the Bank of Canada to continue with interest rate cuts to fuel consumer activity, consumer spending.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of time. There's another week, a week or 2 weeks before that decision needs to be made. But basically, if these tariffs are going to stay, and this is going to be a long game, it is inevitable that there's going to be a big ripple effect. I mean, there's going to be many businesses that pretty much just go under. They just can't operate on the operating margins of what these tariffs are going to do. There are banks that have lended to these companies. Those loans might not get repaid. So there's a huge ripple effect that happens. Obviously, the job losses that happen. So I think the Bank of Canada will need to come in sooner rather than later. I do forecast, 25 basis point cut this month, and obviously closely watching anything that happens with respect to tariffs. Obviously, if things do get sorted out, there's some sort of negotiated settlement. Doesn't look likely at this point, at least for this month. But if anything like that happens, and obviously they have a little bit more time before they need to react. But this is going to cause a lot of damage, basically for the rest of this year, and potentially even for the next couple of years. I mean, the U.S. has lost a lot of brand value, and this overhang, this hammer of tariffs coming down at any point in time, is not good for Canada.
You mentioned a negotiated settlement on tariffs. What we heard yesterday from Prime Minister Mark Carney, speaking as Prime Minister yesterday, were these matching tariffs on automobiles from the United States. Is there what does a federal government need to do? We are in an election right now. What do you think that the next federal government needs to do? Then is it about countermeasures, or is the ultimate goal some kind of negotiated deal?
Yeah, so I think in the long term, as Canadians and myself, the way I look at kind of the outlook of Canada, Canada will do well when the U.S. does well and when North America does well. There's no other way about it. And so, the going it alone approach, it's nice rhetoric, but it's really hard to make that work for Canada. It's hard to see the level of prosperity. We see more prosperity the more interlinked we are with the U.S. and the more trade we do with the US. And the US is a behemoth of a consumer, and we want to sell to the US. And that's how Canada does well for the long term. In the short term, obviously, there's going to be negotiations, there's going to be the threat of tariffs back and forth. And obviously, wanting to posture before negotiations are done. It's hard to know the exact, it's hard to know exactly what the US administration wants as an end outcome, and if there could be some sort of negotiated settlement in terms of a couple of things that they're looking to do. But obviously, Canada does well when the U.S. does well, and when tariffs are basically gone or close to zero. So how we get to that point and what levers need to get pulled and what people need to say to make other people feel good, or whatever other types of agreements, whether it's security agreements, economic agreements, other types of agreements that we could do, that we need to get into the room to figure out what are the levers that Canadian government needs to pull to figure that out. Now, obviously, I'm sure they're trying really hard. And look, Canada's not the only country that's impacted by this. Basically, it's the whole world. So everyone's trying to figure out, how this gets solved. There's also a lot of pressure with the stock markets falling on the U.S. administration. Are they really going to hold these tariffs for the long term? Because the stock markets are dropping quite a bit. A lot of uncertainty in the U.S. as well. So ultimately, it comes down to a negotiation. You want to have the smart people in the room trying to figure that out and representing Canada and coming to some sort of deal. It's easy, to kind of watch other people and tell them to do this and to do that. But if you're not in the room, you really don't know what the real levers are. So you just kind of hope and pray that the best people are in the room and they're going to come to some sort of conclusion that works well for everybody.
Rahim, very good to speak with you today. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Rahim Madhavji is president of Knightsbridge Foreign Exchange. It's 12:15 now. This is BC Today, nearly 2 weeks into the federal election campaign. And so, yes, the focus so far has been on fighting tariffs from the U.S., dealing with the housing crisis, cost of living. Well, we want to know from you, what matters to you in this election? What are the issues that you would like political parties to be talking about? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining us now is Paul Kershaw, who's founder of Generation Squeeze and a public policy professor at UBC. Paul, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.
What are the issues that you think matter to voters in this election?
Well, clearly the dominant issue is how is Canada going to fend off the attack on our economy and potentially our sovereignty from President Trump. And so I think that's well understood at this stage. But underneath that, there were a range of domestic issues that have been troubling in Canada for some time. People describe it as affordability. The housing issue has been particularly pernicious in our province for now decades. And unfortunately, the scourge of expensive housing and housing wealth inequality has spread from our province across the country. So I think that is still a top point of conversation for many as we're casting about to determine who we will vote for.
Sure. And what do you make of what you have heard from political leaders on those issues, even those domestic issues?
Yeah, I think that I'm a little bit sad that Donald Trump's attacks on Canada meant that we've kind of stayed at a bit of shallower level, less depth, going less deep into some of the domestic issues. On housing, for instance, there's a couple of major promises that the two leading parties have made, and they're similar. So both the Liberals and the Conservatives would talk about reducing GST or eliminating GST on newly constructed homes. And you'll hear both of those leaders say, hey, you might save $50,000 to $65,000 in the next purchase of a home, which sounds really good. And it's a useful tool. One of the things that concerns me, though, is that people should know that in any given year, only about 20% of the homes that people purchase in Canada are newly constructed. And so 4 in 5 people aren't going to get any savings from that particular announcement. I just want people to kind of have that reality check in mind. In addition, I think Mr. Carney has been particularly clear. He wants Canada to build 500,000 homes a year, which is a stretch goal, a big ambition. And there's no doubt we do need more supply. But again, a bit of a reality check I would offer to listeners is that, we've known we've wanted to add supply in this country for some time. And so here's what the numbers have looked like. Between 2015 and 2020, we were doing about 200,000 homes a year. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've got up to about 250,000. So that's a 25% increase. That's pretty good. Now, Mr. Carney and to some degree, Mr. Polyev, although he's less specific about his number, they want to stretch much, much further. And I guess my question is, are we organizing our housing plan around something that's realistic, a stretch goal? A stretch goal is great, but if it's not realistic, then I need us to have a little more clarity about focusing on things that are in reach in the short term. And so I would invite voters to think about that question going forward.
Yeah, what are some of those things that would be more in reach, more practical, perhaps?
Well, I think that you and I will have talked about housing as being sort of the epicenter of an intergenerational tension. That I'm 50 now, full disclosure, been in Metro Vancouver's housing market for a little over 20 years, and I live in a single attached home that's gone up in value by more than $1 million. What's been good for me, though, means that someone who's as hardworking, as smart as me, but younger or a newcomer can't afford to live where I do. And I think that this has been the under-discussed theme around housing for some time, that we have asked millennials and Gen Z to endure higher rents, larger mortgages, maybe forgo the dream of home ownership, as part of a strategy to protect the wealth that I have gained and others my age and older have gained as homeowners. We could have had a policy that said, my God, home prices have gone up too much. Let's think about using every tool to try and rein them in, see them fall somewhat. But that has not really been our public policy goal. Most, from Christy Clark onwards, politicians have said we need to protect the equity that owners have gained. But that's a huge sacrifice we're imposing on millennials and Gen Z. You suffer a lower standard of living to protect my wealth. I think that we are only going to solve Canada's housing unaffordability problems and the housing wealth inequality they've created if we say to people like me who've been benefiting from the protection, how might I contribute more to help millennials and Gen Z? It might be with their post-secondary costs or their childcare. It might be that, in retirement, I don't expect as much old age security so that some of the money can be repurposed to help younger folks. But that intergenerational solidarity needs to be talked about more, because we can't just ask younger folks to give older folks protection without asking the financially secure people being protected, hey, what might we do to reciprocate?
Paul Kershaw is my guest, founder of Generation Squeeze, a public policy professor at the University of BC. And we're asking you, is it housing or another issue? What is the issue that matters to you in this federal election? Love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or you can just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And let's go to Jim at Spence's Bridge. Hi, Jim. What are the issues that matter to you in this election?
Well, one of the things I'm not hearing politicians talk about is upgrading our democracy. There's zero talk about that. It's the people that will make better decisions, particularly in a tariff war. And I think upgrading our democracy is important to better our economy, to provide the squeezed generation more say in government. We need to legalize real democracy.
What do you mean by that specifically? What would upgrade democracy?
We need to legalize the right of people to introduce and vote on government bills, potentially using a cell phone or a computer. Allow the people, I'm sure the young people would like to have a decision or a say on how housing is built in this country. They could bring in bills to, pass housing laws, change regulations, whatever.
I can hear Paul Kershaw reacting to that. Jim, if you don't mind, I'm just going to get him to respond. I haven't heard that before. What a novel concept, Paul?
Well, I love Jim's focus on democracy generally. He's got a specific idea that you might describe as more direct democracy. So not only does a voter vote for a representative once every few years, but in between elections of a representative, maybe we use more plebiscites and so on, and we vote on specific issues. We do have that in certain moments, and there are pros and cons. So I'm going to think more about whether I'm really excited by Jim's specific idea, but his focus on upgrading democracy, I'm with him. And here's one thing I would say, it might be a bit provocative. If we want a better democracy, then we as voters need to increasingly not ask our politicians to promise us the impossible. I think we've evolved lately in Canada as democratic voters to say, politician, more often than not, you'll earn my vote if you promise to cut my taxes, but also spend more on stuff that matters to me. But that is a recipe for I want a free lunch. And, there aren't really free lunches in society. And it's a problem when we turn our politics into politicians competing to offer us the impossible. And it's having a harm for those who are younger and who walk in our footsteps. Canada is running a $42 billion deficit right now outside of a recession. And then Mr. Poilievre is minimally wanting to say, I'm going to cut $20 billion of taxes a year, minimally. It's more than that, but that's the part I can count. Or Mr. Singh, $14 billion more. Or Mr. Carney, about $10 billion more. And that's before talking about what they want to spend more on. And so this offer of citizens, you only vote for me if I promise you can give less and expect more, that worries me at a time when, if we're going to be a strong democracy to stand up to Mr. Trump, our politics can't just be what's politics doing for me. It has to be like, oh, politics is about my responsibility to step up and stand strong for Canada.
Is that something that happens in an election?
It could do. I remember, I've written about one way to resist Mr. Trump is to remember a different president. And I might, screw up the quote from Mr. Kennedy, but it went something like, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what, you can do for your country. That one, people loved that. I think Canadians at certain moments love that. And we kind of get duped in elections to thinking only as consumers when there's something deeper. Like, we are citizens, we are community members. And I think Jim's call to upgrade democracy starts with asking voters, think as citizens, and what both do we owe and what can we ask for help with? Okay. And for people like me who are more financially secure, I'm not Jeff Bezos, but I'm financially secure.
I don't know anyone who is. Yeah.
Yeah. What can I contribute? I don't think we ask that enough.
I'd love to go to Patrick here in Vancouver. I just have a couple minutes, Patrick, but go ahead. You have a personal story you'd like to share.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. So I'm going to be closing on a pre-build, so I'll be a first-time home buyer pretty soon here. And your guest may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's a tax break for new home buyers who purchase a property under $500,000 or $550,000. And show me what you can get. I live in Vancouver. You can't get anything for that. So I'd love to see, and I don't know if this is in the works, but like getting a tax break on that $550 and then paying taxes on the remaining amount seems to make sense to me. But
and you did not get that.
There's really no incentive for a first-time home buyer, in my opinion, especially living where I live.
Yeah, Vancouver. Patrick, thank you so much, and congratulations. I have a minute here, Paul, but yeah, what can you tell us about any kind of incentives for first-time home buyers?
Well, Patrick's going to like both Mr. Carney and Mr. Poilievre, who are proposing to remove GST on newly constructed homes. That's the 1 in 5 of the homes that happens in any real estate transaction these days. And both of those would make them available to first-time buyers. Mr. Carney would only make it available to the Patricks of the world. Mr. Poilievre would extend it more generally. And when we come back from the break, we can talk about the pros and cons of that.
Okay. Patrick, thank you so much. Good to hear from you. And we are taking your calls. What is the issue that matters to you in this election? Our numbers, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. If you want to email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. We have some emails coming in on this as well. In fact, on that question of democracy, Dee writes, the most important issue for me in this federal election is that Canada remains a stable democracy. I do not want to follow so many countries, including the U.S., into an oligarchic dictatorship. This scares me very much, so I will vote strategically if need be. Unfortunately, I do have to do so because we have an inadequate voting system where 40% of voters get 100% of power. Okay, and let's take some more of your emails now. Joanne writes as well, Canada, what I want from government, Canada is on the high end of taxes. I would like a forensic audit of how much taxes, user fees, and service fees we pay when we compare to Denmark or other European countries who pay high taxes, but they don't pay for post-secondary education, health services, and many other things. We pay $6,000 per year for property taxes, house insurance, and car insurance. It's no wonder people are struggling as the government hires more and more paper pushers instead of frontline workers. And that's from Joanne. And Michael writes from Nelson, your guest has really clever ideas that need to be developed and acted on. Who is squeezing the younger generation? I feel the moving of money to overseas accounts is what's squeezing all of us. Bring it home. Making our future generations our focus is the key to helping them. And that's from Michael in Nelson. Thanks so much for your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca is our address. We continue to ask you, what matters to you in this election, with Paul Kershaw from Generation Squeeze. We're back with Paul Kershaw, founder of Generation Squeeze and a public policy professor at UBC. We heard from Patrick, who's a first-time home buyer, and he says we need more incentives for people like him. And you were saying, Paul, that there are some proposals from the Conservatives and the Liberals on that. And you were mentioning that, some of them are more directed at someone like Patrick, others, the Conservatives, more general. What are the distinctions there?
Yeah, so there's, I think, objectives to help first-time buyers be able to afford more. And then I think there's objectives about trying to get more units built in Canada. And so Mr. Carney and Mr. Poilievre sort of diverge a little bit in their thinking on this GST rebate. Mr. Carney would allocate the GST rebate specifically for the Patricks, the first-time home buyers. Mr. Poilievre is saying he's open to extending that rebate to whomever. And on some levels, that worries me a little bit because, I'm someone who I already shared, like I've gained over $1 million in my home. If I sell it and I want to go buy a newly built condo or whatnot, do I need a tax break when I've already been benefiting in the housing market and my gains are sheltered from taxation? I would say no. But I know there are some developers out there who's like, we just need to make the finances work for getting more stuff built. So they might be inclined to like Mr. Poilievre's idea more. Although I would think there's a more target effective way to do that. And this is a broader conversation, but right now we ask developers to contribute a lot of the windfalls from rising home prices. We do it through something called development cost charges. And as developers want to get more stuff built, they get charged by a municipality fees to build the infrastructure like water, electricity, sewer, parks, schools. And the data now show that's adding potentially up to a third more to the cost of a newly built home that then a first-time buyer or renter is going to pay. I think we really do need a conversation about saying, let's not all put all the costs of infrastructure and gaining society's part of the wealth that's been created from rising home prices from developers. And we need to start talking about how neighbors generally who are benefiting from rising home values could shoulder some of those costs for the infrastructure so that's not so expensive for someone buying newly built places. That hasn't been talked a lot about in the election, but I think coming after the election, it'll be an increasingly important conversation.
That's Paul Kershaw, my guest at UBC, public policy professor and founder of Generation Squeeze. We'll continue to take your calls on what matters to you in this election. And in about 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to talk about cherry blossoms because, yes, they are everywhere. And I'm loving them. So I want to hear from you on that. That's all right after the CBC News Update with Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. BC's Jobs Minister says the latest labour force survey shows the province had an increase of 5,700 jobs from February to March. Diana Gibson says that comes despite the tariff threats from U.S. President Donald Trump and as Canada works to find new trading partners. BC's unemployment rate is 6.1%, below the national average of 6.7%. An Abbotsford man has been sentenced for his role in a so-called sextortion case. Jesse Taves had been charged with publishing an intimate image without consent and fraudulently using a computer password to commit an offense. Port Moody police say the charges were related to the extortion of a young female. And UBC is preparing to unveil Canada's first purpose-built biomedical engineering facility. The university says the 5-story building includes specialized labs, research spaces and teaching facilities that will advance innovation in areas such as artificial intelligence-driven diagnostics, medical devices, and life-saving treatments. And now the forecast on the north coast, cloudy this afternoon with a high of 10. Highs around 14 with sunshine in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 13. Highs from 9 to 12 with lots of sunshine in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly sunny with a high of 14. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, mainly sunny as well this afternoon with highs from 14 to 17 degrees. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you, Rob. You have a great weekend.
Thank you.
That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for being with us. And we are taking your calls, asking you what matters to you in this election. Let's go now to Stephanie in Vancouver. Hi, what's your top issue, Stephanie?
So during COVID, we saw prices for everything go way up. And then once everything calmed down from COVID, we didn't see any of those prices come down. And now with facing down tariffs, we're likely going to see the same thing. Prices go up because of tariffs. But when that all calms down, we're never going to see those prices come down again. And I would love some sort of leadership that's going to help protect consumers from that price gouging. You know, the profits for major corporations and the monopolies in groceries, in telecom, all that kind of stuff, their executives just keep getting richer and richer. And prices on necessities just keep going up and up and up just to line their pockets, not because of the real cost of those products. And I haven't heard anything from any leader about any kind of protection for consumers from price gouging. So I'd really love somebody to address that.
So kind of end game for any price increases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not even just for the tariff, but just sort of in general. You know, it seems like there are no checks and balances in place to protect regular people from price gouging.
Stephanie, thank you so much for the call. And again, bringing that question of affordability to the fore. Dale is joining us now from Mill Bay. What matters to you in this election, Dale?
There's a couple of things. One of the first things that I am kind of puzzled about is everybody's looking at Trump and the tariffs there, and nobody's talking about the 100% Chinese tariff on canola, pork, and seafood. And then there's the other issue of the fact that Mr. Carney is not an elected prime minister. He is what is called a caretaker prime minister. He has no power. He has no authority. He can't make policy, and he has no mandate, and yet he's out there preaching like he's got all of this under control. I think he should look at the Constitution and step back because, personally, he has way too much personal and previous financial involvement with Communist China to be of any real value for Canada. I fear that if he gets into power, we're going to be flying a different flag in this country.
Dale, thank you very much. And in terms of his role as you know, that separation between his role as prime minister right now and as well as Liberal leader running in this election, and we'll see, you know, the result of the election. Dale, thank you very much. Erica is our next caller now in Surrey. Hi, Erica.
Oh, hi. How are you?
I am fine. What's the issue that matters to you in this election?
I would like election reform. I'm struggling wanting Carney to be prime minister, but I can't stand the person who's running as a Liberal. I want to be able to vote for the prime minister separately and for someone who represents me and my riding, because I know they need to speak for me.
In Surrey. Okay, Erica, thank you very much. The question of democratic and election reform once again. Our last caller now is Tim in Nanaimo. Hi, Tim. What's the issue for you in this election?
Oh, hi. Thank you. So it's representation, and basically whatever your issue is, you know, even election reform, House reform, like it all depends on representation. You can't have any power if you don't have a person in Parliament voting on your behalf. And with any of the mainstream parties, they whip their members' votes. So they don't have freedom. Yet we have freedom at the polls. And that's what we need to do is we need to change the way we think about what democracy means and how to achieve it. And it comes down to that representational freedom and having an independent representative. And so parties that don't whip their vote, like the Green Party, is your greatest democratic vote. And for all the issues that they stand for, that everybody is concerned about, housing, environment, greenhouse, global warming, climate change, we call it now. So, whatever your issue is, I think there's a thread that leads to the lack of representation. And that's just my most important thing for changing the country and creating unity of Parliament, unity of Canadians, coming together to solve our problems. And 350 plus members in Parliament, that's a lot of people that can work on problems. If only they were free to do so and self-organize.
Tim, thank you so much. I'm hearing a lot about the democratic process from our callers today. That's great to hear from you, Tim in Nanaimo. Paul, interesting that we're hearing about those kinds of concerns as you were talking about with institutions earlier as well. One thing I want to wrap with is, in terms of that generational fairness that's kind of been going around and has been an issue. We heard it from the Liberal government as well, even a year ago. With their budget. But Lenora writes us to say, in terms of the points that you're raising, Paul, she's saying many seniors who own a home or some of their house live frugally and expect to use their equity to pay for their own care in their twilight years. I strive to be open-minded with your guests, but I hear this real anti-age agenda. So what do you make of that? People who say, wait, hold on a second. This is something that I'm relying on as I age as well.
Oh, yes. Well, and it saddens me that Lenora here is like an anti-age agenda. Please come to Generation Squeeze's website and see that I think we have the strongest plan for eliminating seniors' poverty anywhere in the country and are actively campaigning for that. It is important that the data make clear that some retirees have more financial security than others in society. And if we're going to be needing to stand up for Canada right now, those with financial security should be asking ourselves, how can we contribute? And then I also because the theme of democracy has been so part of our call-in show today, I think one thing that's critical to the strength of democracy is not letting some fake news necessarily, carry on. And I heard a caller talk about how we have an illegitimate prime minister right now. I think I just, as a prof, need to call that out. That's completely inaccurate. Mr. Carney is the prime minister right now because he is the leader of the party that has the most seats in the House, and that is exactly how our system works. That's exactly what the Constitution calls for. And also, I would invite Joanne, who made a really interesting email in the middle part of the hour today, talking about how Canada is a high tax country. I would encourage your listeners to go and actually check out the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's website, and look for the comparisons around taxes by country. And you'll see that Canada is actually right in the middle. And I think that matters. I think when we think that we're a high tax country, but not getting as much as, I think she said, Denmark, that's a kind of misinformation. And so it matters in the moment of, a strong democracy has good information. And these were two moments where I think people were sharing information that isn't accurate. And I would encourage us all to enrich our democracy by making sure we have the facts.
Paul, good to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
You too. That's Paul Kershaw, public policy professor at UBC and founder of Generation Squeeze. It's 12:42 now. Lots of emails are coming in, and we have an email here from Stephanie, who writes, when it comes to issues that are important to her, she writes, the right to repair. I praise the recent tripartisan effort to pass through the Senate legislation that took years to put in place for making a start toward giving business, entrepreneurs, and consumers the right to repair automobiles, applicables, and other consumer goods. What are each party proposing to make a national program and legislation happen to keep consumer rights and to repair it and maintain our goods? Michelle writes from Saanich, sovereignty, strengthening our country and sovereignty over our lands and defense and democracy. Thank you very much for that. Adele writes from Victoria, I'm disappointed that so many of the candidates are promising tax cuts. There are so many things that need to be government funded that we should really be increasing taxes somewhere so they could be more explicit about who pays what taxes. And Catherine writes, what matters to me in this election is voting for a prime minister who seeks to unite the country and promote a healthy, substantive, and respectful discussion about things that matter most to our country, how we use our natural resources, how we fight climate change, and how we solve the drug crisis, and how we make housing more affordable, etc. I do not support any political party that promotes hate and division and who encourages to use bad words to express disagreement, such as the F. Trudeau camp of the Conservative Party. That, to me, is not constructive and not democratic. And Peter writes, I'm amazed no one has brought up progressive taxation. Trickle-down economics has been shown to slow the economy, leave more in the hands of those who put it right back into the economy. That's from Peter. Thanks so much for all of your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca. As we head into the weekend, if you're looking for some color in your day, just look up and look around. Cherry blossoms have sprouted in their full pink glory. And whether you're viewing them from afar or walking right under a canopy of pink blooms, they really do make your day. We'd love to hear from you. Do you get excited about cherry blossom season like I do? Where do you think are the best spots for cherry blossom viewing? You can call us now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And thank you for all of your photos of cherry blossom sightings. We will share your photos in just a few moments, and we will announce the winner of a BC Today prize pack too. Right now, I'm joined by Egan Davis, a horticulturalist educator and manager of parks operations at the City of Richmond. Welcome and happy cherry blossom season.
Happy cherry blossom season. I get excited about it.
Do you?
Cherries,
Oh, I'm so glad. What makes you so excited about it?
Oh, it's the change of seasons, and it really is an indication that spring's, here, and warmer temperatures right around the corner, and they're beautiful.
They really are, and I mean, there's a lot of them in Richmond.
There are, and in fact, Garry Point Park has, I think, the largest concentration of cherry trees that I'm aware of.
Really?
It's fantastic right now.
What's it like for you to manage these parks with these cherry blossoms?
Oh, I mean, there's with any trees and managing trees in parks, we have a management plan, and we certainly anticipate, seasonal changes and, an aging urban forest. And, we look at making sure that trees are healthy and safe for the community.
I get excited about cherry blossom season. I was just in Japan, and people get excited there, obviously, about cherry blossom season as well. Can you tell me how we came to have these here in our province in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Well, cherry blossom trees were introduced by the Japanese Canadian community in the early 20th century. And then in the mid-20th century, when cities became, becoming larger and more dense, city foresters were looking for alternatives to some of the larger trees that we were planting, like elm trees and really large oaks and maples. And Japanese cherry blossom trees are smaller, and so they fit better in our cities. And of course, with the flowers, they add vibrancy to our cities, and people love them. And so it's really from the 1950s right up until now, we've been planting a lot of cherry trees in our cities.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And what is it that makes BC such a good place, in terms of the environment and climate for them to thrive here and have thrived?
Yeah, well, the climate is really, really good for Japanese cherry blossom trees. One thing that they require is they do require a winter. So the flower buds are set in the summertime, but they actually require cold temperatures through the winter to trigger the flowering response. So in a warmer climate, in fact, actually, without a colder winter, the trees don't flower so well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So do you see any of that changing just with, the impacts of climate change?
Absolutely. And so not only in sort of the Metro Vancouver region, but elsewhere, like in Japan, for example, the time of year when cherry trees are flowering is becoming earlier and earlier.
Yes.
Right. And so plant breeders are actually working to develop trees that are not so reliant on those cold temperatures to trigger flowering, and also so that the trees are more predictable in terms of their flowering time.
That was a big topic of discussion when I was there, is that the season had started earlier. Let me just put out our numbers again. We're asking our audience, do you get excited about cherry blossom season? Have you seen them around you? And where do you go? I know sometimes people don't like to share, but let us know where you're seeing them. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And Cody is calling us from Trail. Hi, Cody.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Good afternoon, Egan.
Nice to have you back. We are well. Are you seeing cherry blossoms in Trail?
We are not, Michelle.
No.
Not yet, anyway.
Where have you seen them then?
A couple of the places that you would want to go and see them is the Creston Valley, because I'm pretty sure that they have a cherry blossom festival in the Creston Valley.
Wonderful.
And then anywhere along the Okanagan, anywhere where there's the orchard. So I would say from then on up to Winfield or anywhere in there.
Fantastic. And Cody, do you get excited too?
I get excited more about summer because we're only 2 months away, and the reason I get so excited about summer is because my birthday's on the 1st of June, and that's when I'm going to turn 39.
Oh, wonderful. Lots to celebrate. And so this is sort of the first harbinger of that. Yeah, I think that's how people see it, right? Things are changing. This is the turnaround. Cody, thank you.
Yeah, and we know that summer's on its way.
That's right. Cody, thank you. And an early happy birthday to you. That's Cody joining us from Trail. Our number again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Let me just also point out that we have had some wonderful photo submissions from you. So we've been asking you all week for your cherry blossom photos. So if you're watching us right now on TV or the live stream, you can see these beautiful shots that were sent in. So thank you to Douglas Johnston, who sent us a row of 5 huge trees, just overhanging at a parking lot in Elm Village in Chilliwack. Douglas, thank you so much. Sue Jordan zoomed in for some gorgeous close-ups of the flowers themselves, and as well as magnolias too. You look at the detail in those, Egan, and the pink petals, just gorgeous. Thank you very much, Sue, for that. Sarah Plumpton, talking about the Vancouver Island and Victoria, she sent 3 photos from her walk on the lush grounds of the Lieutenant Governor's house. And here it is now, this lovely photo of a bench under a tree, a wooden bench. It just looks like the perfect spot to sit and view the blossoms above you and kind of contemplate, write some poetry. I don't know. What do you think of these photos?
Oh, they're fantastic. And I've actually, that last one, I've seen that tree and that garden is just fantastic.
Oh, you have? Yes. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. We also have one from John. Now, John sent us a photo. This is outside a residence with a huge flowering tree, but then also in front of the gate, there's a Canadian flag hanging, and John captions it, Canada proud. So an ornament to the ornamental cherry tree, a very proud and patriotic ornament. Zoe also sent us one from beautiful Parksville, my favorite place, one of my favorite places in the province. Zoe writes, quote, a lovely island of color and inspiration and a sign of spring. And this is outside the Raven Song Aquatic Center, actually in Qualicum Beach. Oh, that's gorgeous. And they've got the beautiful bushes just under the tree as well, just to kind of give some more, just to punctuate that tree. Okay, thank you so much to all of you for your photos. They are stunning, and we will announce who wins this coveted BC Today prize pack coming up. I'm also curious then, I was talking to someone today. How do you tell the difference between the actual cherry trees that bear fruit and the ornamental cherry trees? Because I guess there's the Okanagan flowering cherry tree as well, as we heard from Cody there.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, the context of where you would see them is probably a good first place to start. So the trees that are planted in like city streets and parks are typically the ornamental flowering cherry trees. But also the form and habit. Japanese flowering cherry trees tend to have a very broad spreading form and very sort of horizontally layered branches. And so just the shape and the form of the tree is another indicator.
Is there also a difference in the time when they bloom, or no?
Yeah, there's, well, with the edible cherries, they will also flower at different times. And there's a relatively broad window of a few weeks where both ornamental cherry trees and edible cherries will flower. So the timing with cherry trees is always so dependent on the temperature and the weather that we're having. So that's actually really hard to predict.
I know. It's like people are watching it. Okay, when's it going to happen?
Yeah.
When's it going to happen? I'm just going to say that I actually am unable to see our callers list right now, just due to some technical issues. So I'm going to ask the control room just to give me the names in my ear. And Kasha in Surrey is calling us now about cherry. Kashif. Hello, Kashif.
Hello. This is my first time I'm calling you guys, so
welcome.
I'm very excited actually. So
about calling in or about the cherry blossoms?
Both actually. I'm first time calling, and I never even probably not listened years this radio before, but and talking about cherry, that was the one reason I'm calling.
Yeah, tell us where you're seeing them.
I don't pay attention when I'm driving, but my wife, she's a new landed immigrant. Last year she landed, and this was the time when she landed actually, and she could see that. She said, "Oh my God, yesterday the tree color was different, and now today is different, and tomorrow it's different." So that's what she's been doing since spring starts. So even yesterday, even day before yesterday, we were out on 88 and 128 where we live, and she could tell me that, "Oh, see that's the color of trees change. That's a cherry blossom." And we have a 2-year-old daughter, so she's been just saying her, "Zara, look there, look at the color of the tree." So it's so beautiful, actually.
That's amazing that she's brought this new enthusiasm, and you have just kind of been ignoring it yourself.
Yeah, see, most of the time when I'm on the road, I'm driving, so I just pay attention to the traffic and stuff. But she is a passenger, so she could look around. She could more spend time looking around, actually.
That's wonderful.
So that's what she's doing.
And that's great. Okay, so you got to pay attention. You got to stop and smell the cherry blossoms.
We actually, I just heard that in the program that in Richmond, some of the place they have so many cherry trees.
Yes.
Probably we are gonna go this weekend to see that place.
Egan can tell you a bit more about that. Egan.
Well, perfect timing. On April 6th, this Sunday, we have in Richmond at Garry Point Park the Richmond Cherry Blossom Festival, and such a terrific event. There'll be cultural demonstrations and Japanese tea ceremonies and food from local vendors. So I'll be there, and come say hi if you see me there.
Yes, absolutely, Kashif. Thanks for the call. We have, I think it's Myrna calling us. Hi, Myrna. Hi, Myrna. You're calling from the Okanagan?
And I really like the distinction that your guest made about, the different types of cherry trees we have. I have been at Garry Point Park when the cherries are blooming, and it's just magical, actually. But I also love when our cherries, the edible kind, bloom out here in the Okanagan. It's a special time, and it's a promise of what's to come, that delicious fruit that we grow here.
Oh, you've put it so beautifully, Myrna. A promise of what's to come, whether it is that fruit. I have a cherry tree, and so I know how exciting that is, and what's to come in terms of the season, too. And I imagine that's why people just love it. Mm-hmm. You can have a wonderful time at the Cherry Blossom Festival. I'm sure it's going to be busy.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, we're going to have a great time this weekend.
Great to speak with you. That's Egan Davis, who is a horticulturalist educator and manager of park operations at the City of Richmond. That photo with a bench under the cherry tree is the winner of our BC Today prize pack. Congratulations.